Tamara Al-Qaisi-Coleman. I am the social media coordinator for CavanKerry Press. A quick little visual description. I'm a pale Middle Eastern woman with brown eyes, curly black hair, and I'm wearing a Satoru Gojo shirt for y'all who know. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the latest in CavanKerry series of virtual readings celebrating our new and forthcoming releases. Before the reading begins, we want to take a moment to acknowledge that the land that we occupy in Bergen County, New Jersey, belongs to the Munsee Lenape people. We honor their history. We cannot function in our work as arts activists, nor offer a safe space for all writers without understanding the struggle for Indigenous rights. We have added, or one of my peeps will add in the chat, a link to the native land map so you can identify which land you occupy, plus some other links to resources so that you can learn more, offer your support, volunteer, just do all the good things. And we do want to take a moment to say a belated Eid Mubarak to our Muslim friends and family that just passed this past weekend. So Eid Mubarak, happy end of Ramadan. It was a it was a tough one, y'all. And finally, we wanted to take a moment to address the ongoing consequences and far-reaching implications of the new administration's assault on progressive values in the US, especially for communities that have been strategically underserved, poorly cared for, and exploited throughout the history of our country. While CavanKerry occupies but a small space in the publishing landscape, we have always made it our business to care for the very people whose well-being is most under threat. And our commitment remains steadfast. We believe in the power of words to uplift communities and connect individuals from all backgrounds and experiences. And we will continue the vital work of our publishing and programming in order to foster a safe and welcoming environment. And now, with all of that, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So we are going to start out with Austin, and then Austin will pass it off to Noah, and then our two poets will be in conversation with each other after they both read. So please, if you throughout the night, oh, sorry. Throughout the night, if you find yourself having questions that you want to ask our folks, and you want to get your question into the conversation, drop it in the chat, and I'll grab it and give it to Austin so that we can continuously feed this poetry conversation. And we're just really excited to have all of you here tonight. Okay. So sorry. I think the live stream is loading, or that might just be for me. So sorry. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right. So Austin Araujo is a writer from Northwest Arkansas. He's the recipient of a Wallace Stegner Fellowship from Stanford University. His poems have recently appeared in Poetry, Bennington Review, and Gulf Coast. Yay, Gulf Coast! His debut collection, At the Park on the Edge of the Country, is forthcoming from Mad Creek Books in 2025. Congrats, Austin. That's awesome. Okay.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Tamara. And thank you, Tamara, Dimitri, Gabe, for doing this live stream. It's such a dream to get to do this with one of my best friends in the whole wide world. I'll say more to hopefully, I'll gush so much more after I read a couple of my poems to kind of initiate the night and gush a little bit more over Noah. But I just want to say, thank you for doing this. Thank you everybody for being here, and congratulations, Noah Davis, on this beautiful book, The Last Beat through Revel, and congratulations to CavanKerry Press on such a beautiful art object that I can't wait to have in my tote bag for the next year or so. All right, I'm gonna read three poems from my new book, At the Park on the Edge of the Country, which I couldn't have written without my dear friend Noah Davis. The Bull. A lot of math went into my diet, which I didn't care to understand. I just ate until there was nothing left. After that brief, joyous task, I had physical problems to manage. If I didn't bite, kick, or charge too much, no one would think I was mad, and I could continue standing, sometimes paw at the floor. When I was afraid, I ate. My father seemed a stranger, though I knew much about him. He was also just a bull. There were times he had been aggressive, then lazy, like me. Neither of us could tell you the color of grass. Of course, I'm making my father up. I saw another bull only once. When I died, I'm told, some part of me retained at least a little use, even if most of me had to be thrown away. The tostada. When I twist in my chair, I hear my back crack like a fallen bag of tostadas. Cabbage, sour cream, and hot sauce were the toppings my mother preferred on her tostadas when I was a boy. She didn't grow up eating tostadas. The tostada was something she learned to like. When I reach into the plastic bag, the tostada cracks at my finger's slightest touch like the first light cracks open the dark. Today, after his friend told a good joke, I heard a man cracking up on the street like a tostada that breathes. The sidewalk cracked. The weather's tostada. If you cracked open my skull, you'd find me crumbling tostadas over the pozole my mother would make on Christmas Eve near midnight at a party. There's my parents and there's my real life, I tell myself, chewing on a tostada festooned with cabbage, sour cream, and hot sauce in an autumn that, like many friends, surprises me with its chill here in the West. What cannot be said will be wept, said Sappho. Tostadas are stale tortillas fried in oil, often topped with avocado, radish, and seafood like shrimp, ceviche, or, I guess, tuna. Tostadas from the supermarket come in plastic bags, stacked like discs, loaded with movies or music to be distributed illegally. The excess bit of bag gets tied up with a rubber band, little plastic ponytail that could. My mother nibbles on a tostada while she watches me gesticulate with nervousness, pointing in several directions at once. Where's your father? The therapist asked me the other day. Oh, he lives in Fayetteville, Arkansas. No, she smiled. Where in your life? With the tostada, I am breaking or cracking open my morning's fast. This is the tostada speaking. In the dark, the tostada lies on its back, waiting to be cracked. Okay, I'm going to read one more, and then I will make way for the star of the night. All right, I'm going to read a little bit of a longer one because I love it. And it makes me think about Noah. This one's called My Documentary. I had a dream where the giant brushes inside the drive-through car wash had been replaced with the branches of pines. My mother's car was scratched to hell. When we left the wash, there were children making more men out of snow. Once, I remember my cousin, who was around 7, needed the restroom. I was 15. We were waiting for our grandmother to get off work. Why didn't we just go inside? I walked him to the edge of the parking lot near some pines that protected us from the street. The lot was vacant. My cousin began to pee and said, Austin? And I said, huh? As he just went to town all over my left shin, warm to my ankle, soaking my sock, Nike Cortez. When I came home before I could change, my father smelled it on me. He was furious. He wanted me to beat my cousin senseless. Didn't I have pride? I was scared and I hoped stoic. I sat in the shower. Another time, I was in the running for a full ride in computer engineering. The finalists stayed overnight in the dorms with engineers to be. I didn't ask my host about the difficulty of coursework if he felt any pressure with the scope of the resources he'd been given. I scrolled the online profiles of the date I bailed on for the interview. The next morning, I felt I was doing well. There were 4 middle-aged professors with their elbows on a wooden table. My chair was situated in the middle of the room. I think I blew it when one of them asked me a softball last question, the 4 of them smiling in their light blue button-ups. How would I describe my work ethic? I said I worked like NBA 2K14, wherein I might prioritize which skills to develop, etc. While they shuffled their papers, I acted as if I'd paused, comma, to tell the story of a father, mine, who migrated to this country with ambitions so minor he managed to accomplish them with his first paycheck. This was mostly even true. During my senior year in college, for a final paper on Latino X immigration to Arkansas during the 1990s, I interviewed my father. Time to get his border crossing down in a way my speculative poems hadn't. I felt, listening to him describe, backtrack, revise, and reconsider the two times he crossed the border at 15 and 18, that my life had sprouted from his life. This was, in most ways, a basic idea. It was revelatory to me. The recording and my notes are lost, but I remember details. For instance, he traveled with men whose last name was Araujo but bore no relation to him. For instance, when he reached Texas, he kept his feet in Walmart bags instead of socks. For instance, he said he swam for the first time ever in the river separating one country from the other. For instance, he considers the seed of his decision to come to America the time as a boy he watched a friend greet his father who was home from a season working fields in Alabama. The man had a present with him. It was a pair of Levi's jeans so new they stained the boy's bottom, my father said. He said he remembers in Springdale a couple of months before he met my mother how he blew a check on three pairs. He bought them at Ryan's on Emma Street. We'd shop for school clothes there. By the register stood a life-size cardboard cutout of Michael Jordan beside a measuring stick, where we could see how tall we weren't. Thank you guys so much for listening to those poems. I think I forgot my visual description. I realized in the middle of reading the last poem, so I wanted to offer it here in case it would still be helpful. I am a pale Mexican American man, use he, him pronouns, and I'm wearing a gray button-up shirt. Thank you guys so much for listening to those poems. It's such a dream to get to read and be the opener for one of my best friends in this life, Noah Davis. I remember the first time I met Noah. I was, baby poet. I keep using that word today because I'm thinking a lot about that time. I was like 22, fresh off the plane to Indiana for graduate school. And Noah had been assigned to me as like he was going to be my what they called MFA buddy. He's going to be my mentor, kind of show me the ropes. And I remember I was like waiting outside of this cafe and it was like hot. It was like still, it was like early August, I think. And I was sweating and I was sad and lonely, all these things that baby poets are. And I remember Noah was, I think, like 10 minutes late. And I was just kind of looking around and being like, oh, I wonder, maybe I got the time wrong, I think. But then he shows up. I think he was walking or maybe he was on his bike or something. He made this grand entrance. I remember I thought he was like the most confident person I'd ever met with the warmest smile I'd ever seen. And it's just so lovely to go from that initial moment to writing poems together, showing each other drafts, looking at this book often together. Just it's so sweet. This is a dream. Thank you everybody again for being here so that I can gush over Noah like this. I'll turn it over to Noah in just a second, but I would love to read your bio, Noah. Is that okay? Hopefully that won't embarrass you. Noah Davis's first collection of this river won the Wheelbarrow Emerging Poet Book Prize from Michigan State University Center for Poetry, and his poems and prose have appeared in The Sun, Southern Humanities Review, Best New Poets, The Christian Science Monitor, Orion, the year's best sports writing, North American Review, Poet Lore, and River Teeth, among others. His work has been awarded a Catherine Bakeless Nason Fellowship at the Bread Loaf Writers Conference and the 2018 Jean Ritchie Appalachian Literature Fellowship from Lincoln Memorial University. Davis earned an MFA from Indiana University and lives with his wife, Nikia, in New England. Everybody, please welcome Noah Davis to read from his beautiful new collection.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Oh geez, I forgot Zoom. Yeah, it just shows you. Okay. Well, I thank you, Austin, so much for that. I'll get back to responding to you here soon, but I'll do my visual description. I am a white man, 30 years old, with brown hair and a shirt that looks like it could be a carpet pattern of some sort from the 90s. Yeah, I That was so sweet of you to retell that story. I had totally forgotten that, Austin, about being the buddy, because, we just became friends so darn fast. I feel like even within just the first month, we started to talk and go out to eat, and just, we're in contact. And yeah, it means so much. Thank you for those kind words. And you're one of my best friends in this entire world. And this feels like such a familial celebration right now, to be here with CavanKerry. My dad, the poet Todd Davis, put CavanKerry books in my hand whenever I was in high school and in college. Ross Gay, January O'Neill, Jack Riddle, who is, one of my poet grandfathers, and then the waiting room companions, and just the beauty that this press, has shared with the world. And so whenever I got the call from Gabe that this book was that they were interested in this book and that they would publish this book, I remember just this amazing upswell of astonishment, but overflowing gratefulness. And then, to be in this moment of poetry with these poetry books coming out. Everyone should buy Austin's book. It is a beautiful book. He is such a good poet. And then our other classmate, Janan, her book Come From is out from BOA here at the end of the month. It just feels like such a good moment of celebration of family. And so thank you all for being here for that. And yeah, just never ending thankfulness. This book came about, it started during my MFA in Indiana. And my beloved, who she'll get embarrassed by this, but it was really a time where I was trying to convince her to fall in love with me and us to start a joint life together. And so love is a big part of this book. And but it's not only romantic love. It's also talking about familial love. It's talking about love of place. So Eros, the romantic love, Storge, the love of family, and Topophilia, the love of place, the love of geography. And so much of my work is grounded in my home place, which is Appalachia, the northern tip of Appalachia along the Allegheny Front in Pennsylvania. And it's hard to love a place, and I think, for so much of us, in this moment of America, whether you're loving a people, whether you're loving, a physical place or an idea, your heart breaks at different times for it. And so this is a melding of all of those things. And I think with that, I will just jump into the poems. Places familiar. Meth labs explode in towns of people I love. Great aunts and uncles, in-laws and second cousins. They walk in the night to the fire, down the alley or around the block, gathered with neighbors in flickering light, wondering how many were inside, if they'd recognize them from the gas station, knew them from behind the counter at the cafeteria, passing Jello or tapioca. After the fire, teeth are all that are familiar. Because everyone here smiles with their mouths closed, the people I love walk home counting in their heads what neighbors they couldn't find in the dark. I ask what we are. What part of morning? What bread? What strip mining site? What stream turned to acid? What caddis? What fish swimming sideways? What hawk? What updraft? What fire? What rock? What moth? What finger? What blade? What berry? What bone? I love dream poems so much, and I am so honored. I mean, I'm not honored. I mean, I am honored, but I was so lucky to go to a program that also loved dream poems. Like not only the professors. I remember Stacy Lynn Brown talking about dream poems in such a good way. Kathy Bowman and Ross. I think Adrian was the only one that really didn't get behind dream poems, but. You know, I was so happy to be, and then the cohorts, the poets around love dream poems. And so here's a dream poem. It ends with a line from Yeats, and that's in the title, but the poem is Lake Isle of Innisfree. Dream with my beloved and honeycomb, ending with a line from Yeats. We lay in the grass for a month, and bees built honeycomb around our bodies. She told me we shouldn't peel the wax from our shoulders because we'd pull ourselves from this place where we found each other, entangled in the field neither of us knew before, but now lie, coffined and warm, in the bee-loud glade. I don't know how many folks out there have to deal with ticks. I feel like folks in New Jersey are definitely dealing with ticks. People in New York are dealing with ticks. The ticks are everywhere, and they're only becoming more prevalent. And one of the wonderful things about being around ticks, though, you never want to put all negative on a living being, is the fact that if you spend time outside, if you go for a walk in the woods or if you're out in your garden, and particularly in the springtime when the new ticks are trying to find some good food to hang on to for a while, you do tick checks. And it was something that was, just a routine in our family to be in the vulnerable state of nudity. And I didn't feel that way growing up, but you'd have to strip down and check in places that you couldn't see that well because you didn't want to get Lyme's disease, which is a good precaution to have. But I thought about I've thought about that activity a lot, and so this is a poem about that. Tick Triptych. 1. I've checked my father's body for ticks every day this May, and again tonight. I press my forefinger against the mole on his left hamstring below the buttock, and again it is not ridged nor legged, and again I find my father's body unfamiliar, the same way my body must be to him, grown far from the part of himself he left in my mother. 2. Out of fear and our own want to feast, my beloved and I strip in the bathroom. I search her ginseng flower flesh, and she inspects my trout-backed skin for parasites that would take the blood we'd promised each other that morning, as we had every morning since the mild winters began. And we realized how difficult this promise would be to keep with the woods wrecked full of waiting mouths. 3. The swollen tick dangles like a fat earring from my lobe. In drinking, the tick is now more me than it, but still, I crush the part that is not me. So there's a bunch of those different loves in there, and one of my family's loves is basketball. Everyone in my immediate family played college basketball. Shout out to Nikola Jokic having 60 1 point triple double. Still not going to get the MVP though, but it was pretty incredible. But so my mother played college basketball in the 80s, and you know, we always had this. My mom has an aura about her as being this strong, amazing athlete. And we grew up on stories and saw photos and all of her trophies. And so my mom she does still kind of like this mythic air about her and her athleticism. And so this is kind of an origin story around my mother and her and us as well, my brother. There's a bleeding title. I like to believe. I like to believe my mother pulled my brother and me from herself the same way her cousins lifted snapping turtles, quick and tail first, from the oil drums that lined the east side of the wooden garage where the hoop was nailed too high above the gravel to reach. So she shot the basketball into the water-filled barrels, each time daring the turtles to bite the ball, each time daring herself to lose a finger. Doing good on time still, I think, yeah. So where I grew up in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, it's extractive economy, Rust Belt, Pennsylvania. It's a really incredible, nexus of places where it is Rust Belt with the railroad and factories, but and then, very much the timbering, the mining, and now the windmills that are also up on top of these ridges. And there's all forms of extraction, and it was an incredible realization. I think it happened in high school where, because of the strip mining, and I don't know how much folks know about that type of mining, but it's not deep tunnel mining, which they also did in this area where, they send miners down, hundreds of feet down into the earth to scrape up coal. But this type of coal, bituminous coal, is on top of these ridges, and it was actually easier to just kind of shave them off with massive earth-eating machines. And so to realize that, oh wow, like these mountains were, a little bit taller, maybe not crazy much taller, but they used to be taller before this happened. So we could continue either advancing empire or conveniences to burn that coal for electricity. And so I was raised Mennonite, which is a pacifist faith tradition, and so praying for the people who caused these things, who took the wolves away, took the elk away, who left the streams orange. What does a prayer look like that? And that's all a really long, a really long intro for a very short poem. Prayer for the people who pulled the mountaintops back like a fingernail. When you die, may bees build honeycomb in your skulls. Here is a beloved poem. I remember I was reading like so much Neruda, so much Sappho, so much Lee Young Lee around this, and as I was writing these poems, and this is very much like a Neruda move in this poem. But I really like this portrait of my darling. Portrait of the beloved with rain. Today, I saw ice in the shape of her shoulder blades hanging from a log above a riffle in the stream. Tonight, As my tongue finds that cold again, I shiver at the body betraying its name. Her legs, corded like running sap from a gash on a maple's bark. Stomach, the glide in a river clean enough that I can eat the fish and lie in the current until the sky is so full of stars I can't find my way to shore. My beloved does with me what rain does with streams. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for spending this time on a Thursday night. It means so much that you would come and read and listen to these poems. And to all the people who are going to watch this later on the recording, thank you for taking time to do that. Again, CavanKerry is, a press that I'm just so grateful to be in the catalog and the books that have come out already this year. Bridget Bell's and Nadia's and so it's incredible. And I'm very thankful to be with this, to be with CavanKerry and to be holding a book. Poem sewn into my hunting jacket. When I say I am going to kill a deer on the mountain, I mean I want our daughter to have the strength to jump fences. And when she doesn't come home at night, we will know to find her in the neighbor's garden. When I say we will know to find her in the neighbor's garden, I mean we will not worry about her in strangers' houses. Because while she grew in you, I carried a deer down from the mountain, then fed you that deer so she could be woven with the folding knowledge of the woods, which is always unfolding. When I say we will find her in the neighbor's garden, I mean she has the strength to jump fences. And when I am weak with age, she will walk into the folding woods and kill a deer on the mountain. That poem, I've written a few poems about a possible, child, which is, I think, something that poets do, and there are poets who even write them when there won't be a child. But I do not know what my future holds. But it was. There are a couple of those poems in here, and it's this idea of the extension of family, the possibility of future family love, and how does the love for your place influence that? I think a lot of people think about that, and our time is not unique in thinking about what a world to bring somebody in, even though our fears around that are very real and warranted. But there's always been different times and difficult times when thinking about those things. Let me find this next one. I don't know if Austin will remember this poem, but he helped me with this poem a lot, and I wanted to read it with him. Austin has read a lot of poems by me and has helped me, so I don't know if this one will stick out at all. Mercy Song. Money enough for nail polish, and time enough to paint my beloved's fingers, and light enough to find her blackberry black mouth, and sense enough to not drive home, and awake enough to walk on the other side of the guardrail, and sober enough to name it moon, and sad enough to cry over car-struck catbirds, and tired enough to sleep here until all this mercy runs out. I talked about all the different about the three different types of love, and the that are coalescing around in this collection. And obviously, there are so many different variations of love within those three big buckets, which is all really one bucket. And uh, this next poem, breaks it down even a little bit more specifically about the types of love. With my beloved, upon waking from a nap in a field a week before the first haying. Mulberry purple bird shit love. Trout cut open to pink love. Fresh split locust posts tan in the afternoon love. White goat's milk on your oats love. Deer swimming through deep water love. Crow never forgets your face love. Don't leave me in this tall grass love. And I think this is the last poem. As I mentioned, this collection started off as my MFA thesis, and the cohort that I was in, we were going to graduate in May 2020. And as we all know, what happened in March 2020, that didn't happen. And at that time, people weren't really thinking about. I mean, we didn't know how long it was going to be. Didn't know what. Yeah, we were just in the dark. And so my cohort, we were like, you know what? We're not going to do a virtual reading. We don't want to do that. We've just been spending all time on these computers forever. Like, don't want to have to get on another darn Zoom call at that time. Like, we'll do something, in the future at an AWP or like at a gathering. And it hasn't happened yet. I mean, we're 5 years away from that. And for humans, ceremony is such a important thing, and we probably don't put enough onus and value on it as we should now. I mean, there are certain ceremonies and celebrations that we do, but to not have our final readings, our celebrations of our theses, and to have that public event with folks, it felt open-ended for a really long time, and so this was the poem that I was going to read. This was going to be the last poem to close it out for my MFA, and I was really lucky. The cohort that I was with, Meredith and Soleil, and then also the fiction folks as well. But and then the good friends that I had just throughout in Austin, and Lauren and Jeananne and Alberto and Alex, and just so lovely. And so this is going to be kind of maybe putting a little bow on just to thank everyone. And thank you all for being here, as I said before. The September Side of Light. On the day no deer dies in the county, and every bear finds enough acorns to eat, then sleeps the rest of the afternoon into night, where they see stars shaped in their image, my beloved and I pick the last tomatoes hanging like slow dripping water, and bring the bread from the kitchen and lie in the yard watching two crows, who we have named and who have named us, fly from the neighbor's yard where they talked with him while he dug the carrots his husband planted before he died in May. And the neighbor didn't wash the dirt from the sweet orange skin before he chewed, smiling up at the birds with brown and orange flecks between his teeth. And now the two crows land on the house of the 37-year-old woman who hasn't remembered her uncle's hand on her 13-year-old self in almost 4 days as she makes a bowl of kettle corn popped in coconut oil and sugar and thinks she'll walk to the bridge and count the shadows of fish drifting across the sandy bottom. And maybe, if it's not too late when she arrives home, she'll call the man who gave her his number at the supermarket next to the little tubs of caramel for dipping apples. And my beloved and I hang between their yards, having already forgiven each other for the words said in the tenor of talus slopes this morning over oatmeal. And we eat the heavy bread and chew for so long that we must start a new conversation every time we swallow. Such good, dense bread that jaws ache in eating. And we welcome the ease of sun warmed tomatoes and tell each other tomato stories, tilling and planting and picking and eating more tomato stories than we knew we carried. And in this discovery revel until we each separately and in two different moments realize the warmth and release of tomatoes between our teeth is the same as our feasting on the softest, most tender parts of our bodies. And being pulled by that want, climb to the room with the windows facing joyfully west and lie together in that light different from the day before and detached from tomorrow's light, when deer will die and bears will wander hungry and crows will not come to their names. But that is far from our lane and this room and the 100 more stories, heavy like tomatoes, swaying on the September side of light. Thanks all.
Wow. So gorgeous, man. Thank you so much for that beautiful reading. I love in between you made a reference to long-winded intros. I love banter between poems. I feel like I'm developing that still. Like I don't know what to say. I'm just like, let me just read these things, please. Uh, so thank you for that, for being generous in that way. And for being generous with this, you know, goddamn gorgeous book. I'm so happy that it's here. Okay, I have some questions and then we'll have time for audience questions. But like the way that I prepare questions, I feel like I can go into like academic mode or something. So tell me, knock it off, Austin, knock it off. Like let's just chop it up. Would be
Going
happy.
for that dual MFA. Love that in academia.
Okay, well, okay. I don't know. I can't tell if this is gonna be a softball question or like a harder question. But so you mentioned that there's like all these different types of love in these poems, right? But like one of the loudest versions of love in this book that I see is like erotic love, right? And you mentioned Sappho and Neruda and Liang Li as like these people you were reading, your influences maybe at a certain time when you're drafting these poems. But I would love to hear just more about that. Like, where is that like a like was that a process to get to feel like okay I gotta get like turning this private utterance into a kind of a public right project, right? Was that like
Yeah.
a thing you hurdle you had to go through or go over, and do you see the kind of eroticism of the poems as saying something social is another kind of question I had.
Oh, yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah, the erotic. Um, so I think, I mentioned my dad, the poet Todd Davis. So I like one of my earliest memories is like of reading that he had where he compared my mom's ankle to a wood lily. And so I like, geez, I mean, I was like, dang, dad, game. But like, so I had like this example of that.
Mm.
I'm really lucky. How, the example of love that I was given with my parents uh, but I mean, there are just so many awful love poems out there. Like, and maybe that's too harsh. Like, but like there, I mean, we both taught those like freshman creative writing classes, and like there are some there are some poems out there that, people starting out, and love is always one of those, first things that make people feel in a certain way. And I mean, what is poetry with, like, I mean, Duende is a little different, but it's in that same vein of like, okay, there's this feeling that I need to express through this art form. And I mean, I was very self-conscious about some of these poems. And I mean, I'm self-conscious now thinking of like the readings coming up and like, and reading them and in front of different folks. But I think that, socially, the erotic, the human body, it goes back to, Cartesian duality of like the body is this awful, negative, sinful thing, and the mind and the soul is something separate and holy and pure. And I do not believe in that at all. I think that that's caused a lot of issues around our world, our physical world, and so I see that the body and the love that can happen with the physical body to be a joy and a celebration of life. And so to be pushing against that, to be pushing against the shame of the body, the shame of our biology. And I want, that reflection, I think in the best way, the love that we share with others is the love that we should share with our earth, with our place, with our community. And I'm not saying to just go up and be kissing strangers or anything, but like, think about like the care that you are giving to beloveds, as a way that you care for your stranger, that you care for your neighbor. And so again, like I mentioned in those long-winded intros, like the three bowls of these loves, it's all really one bowl.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love the idea of like that, like by caring or by by trying to activate love in this kind of physical way, that you might be kind of contributing to like this store of care, this store of love in the world. And it kind of goes to my next question a little bit, which is that so many of the, so there's like this erotic strain in this book, right? This romantic life, this romantic love, but so many of those poems are tempered, and even like familial love and all these other love of the natural world are like tempered by the like love it while we can, while there's time, like this enoughness, right? While we still can. And I was wondering, yeah, if you could just talk more about like that enoughness, or like while there's time, and the Mercy Song poem, which I don't remember helping you with. Though
Oh,
it
darn.
sounded it sounded familiar when I was reading your book. I was like, oh, I wonder. So it was funny to hear you say that. But anyways, I was, yeah, wondering like if the while we have time, if you see like a certain like strain in the book is like dealing with a climate disaster. Like you never go out and say like the world is ending, folks, right? And maybe that's the poet in you, like not wanting to, you're looking at the edges of things in some ways, or you're wanting to look at things as they are and not have, you don't say Cartesian duality, in the book, for
No,
example. But yeah, was
tough one to put
climate
into a poem.
was climate disaster like on your mind while you're writing some of these love poems?
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. And I came into this space in Appalachia during this really kind of liminal time between ecological disasters. Of like, I was just far enough removed from certain clear cutting activities, removed from certain mining activities, where the place was rewilding in about as, it was becoming as wild as it could be in that state, since all of these activities were taking place. And so, and then, just within my lifetime, there are some certain types of extraction economies, not extraction economies, but certain forms of extraction came back. And so I was seeing, I'm such a young person. So to see these windows and to know that, things can change so fast, I mean, one of the biggest things going on, not one of the biggest things, but one of the big things going on right now is like public land. Certain lawmakers looking to sell public land off to do tax cuts, which is really insane. But that's more economy and not climate change. But we do not know what the world is going to look like in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. And uh, I do not know what my body is going to look like in 20 years or 30 years. Two very different things. And I don't want to say that the earth is a metaphor for the body, but because of, what science is predicting, I do not think that the world and the spaces that I love will be the same in my lifetime. And so to know, to love and enjoy and to revel and to document, to celebrate these spaces, the community, I think is really important. And also, I always knew I wasn't going to stay young, and I'm very young right now. But I mean, the goal is to be an old person, right? Like I want to live a life, and I want to become old. I want to, and so I know that the times right now. I mean, every morning when I wake up um, and I get to, stand up and get up out of bed without that much effort. I think about and I try to acknowledge and be grateful because I know one day it could be not so.
And it's so interesting, the way I'm like trying to think of like the last poem in the book, the way that it like moves kind of in opposition to some of these things that or maybe not opposition, but it does feel like a speaker, right? Or speakers, because it's a plural pronoun poem, which is, I think we could get nerdy with it and really like dig in deep with that. But just on like kind of a bigger picture level, like all you're saying about, yeah, we don't know how much time how much time we have left. We got to love it while we can. Thinking about doing that in community with one another, not even just like loving the earth, as an
Yeah.
individual. I think these things are all throughout the book and such a like, yeah, powerful moving thread of the book. And I was wondering how you think of this last poem as like, do you see it as the opposite? Like I was reading it, and it's like this is a speaker who is almost as though, right? It's like it's this long narrative poem. It's the title poem for this book. It's harrowing. It's if so many of these poems throughout the like first part of the book are like sweet and gentle or like seeking a kind of gentleness or seeking a kind of sweetness. The last poem kind of does away with all that or like looks maybe it like uses it's like a love as like brutal and as intense as violence, right? I mean, there's this violent act of it. I'm like not describing it because I'm leaving. I want to leave that to you or like not summarizing it so I don't like mess that up. But yeah, just wondering how you think about this like signature, big, significant poem. Thinking about yeah, just like at the end, and do you see it as like a difference from the way the other poems are thinking about these things?
Yeah. No, it definitely is a different tone. And I don't know how many readings I'll be able to actually read it in. It takes 14 minutes to read, and I mean, it's heavy. And yeah, I mean, geez, Gabe and I had so many conversations back and forth about where the heck could this poem go, and I think it ended in the right spot. And because it'd be tough to get up out of, but it does have a different tone. I think that the last movement of it shows that temporal nature of it, the reality of this is not the world these people were given, and it has changed, and it will change for those who come after. Uh, but yeah, geez, that poem is just so big to even to be thinking about. But I think that that's a really good question around like why have that dichotomy of thought. And I think that there are different parts of that poem that make these callbacks to sweetness, to love, to reveling. And I mean, reveling just as a term has so many different, like there's some mischievousness around. There's an edge to reveling. It is not only it's not only sweetness and light, and how have humans reveled in different ways across eons and with other animals, and what violence brought reveling as well. And so yeah, but that's a good question. Too bad I can't read the whole poem right now, but
Oh man.
I hope other folks read it, and yeah, let me know.
It's so, I mean, as Gabe's putting in the chat, there's such a, I'm just reading what he said, that there's such an urgency to that closing poem, such a desperation to hold all that's being stripped away, even while needing to participate in that taking order, in order to survive. That's exactly it. Like this central tension, and it kind of it makes you reread the poems that come before it in this it shines this retrospective light on all those poems. Yeah, it's a if I could put a blurb on the cover, it's like a tour de force, it's like one of those poems that like for real, it's like this big significant thing. Okay, I'll let you off the hook with that last poem a little bit. I'm gonna ask one more question and then I'll turn over to audience. I'll read um some audience questions. Okay, so the your first book of this river, which was lovely, and I remember feeling so in awe because we were in our MFA in the middle of it when Noah got it picked up, and I was like, "Oh, that's what we're doing now. We're getting books, beautiful manuscripts picked up." Anyways, I mentioned that book so that people will go look at it, but also so much of that book is like right uses this fictional. There's so much fiction involved. There's you have this several characters, but especially this one that kind of is taking, who pops up throughout most of that book, short-haired girl. Whereas in this book, it's much more I, right? And an I that the reader could be forgiven for mistaking for like a close version of you. And this might tie back to that first question about erotic love, but I just was wondering if that was like a hurdle that you had to get over, or if you've been writing I poems the whole time. It would be interesting, for folks maybe who aren't quite as familiar with your work as me. It would be interesting to hear about your take on the I, on speaking from your own
Yeah,
point of view.
yeah. I always wanted to tell stories, and I like ever since I was a little kid, like I just loved listening to people tell stories, and I was like, okay, well, if I can one day tell a good story, like that would like hold the most value. And so that first book, I just had such an urgency around these characters, around this place, and I wanted to tell them fictitiously. And so whenever I mean, as fictitious as poetry can be, but the whenever I was finished with that project, these came so much. Yeah, these came a lot easier than
Hmm.
trying to formulate a whole, other kind of narrative. I mean, that first book is nearly a novel in poems,
Yeah.
and so this just felt, and that first book is so tight because it does feel like there's a kind of a narrative arc, whereas this book, it is more of a collection of poems. They're not like occasion poems, but they are not as melded, woven together as that other collection. I mean, obviously the threads, the themes tie this collection together in that way, but it kind of felt like a breath after that first one.
Hmm.
I remember working with Stacy and Adrian just so much of just like, okay, which poem needs where, and what is missing, what needs uplifted, and where, and so all of a sudden these poems, I was just like, oh, okay, like these
Hmm.
poems are coming, these poems are arriving, and yes, much closer to the poet I voice.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's so interesting to hear that they came so much quicker. I always think of you as a like really prolific writer, the hardest working man in Poe is. But I remember, right, if folks want some like behind the scenes like lore about Noah, like thinking back to that last poem, I remember really distinctly that you wrote that poem, I think in like just like a feverish, like few days, right? Like long-handed. I remember you showing me like the couplets. I think they were already in couplets, maybe, or maybe it was just a block.
Yeah,
Um,
because it was Ross's Beholding. I was like, I can write a long poem in couplets. My
totally,
goodness.
yeah. Oh, that's just so, it's so
What an
interesting.
example. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna turn to some audience questions. This one's from Tamara. You write about place and specifically the stark duality of Appalachian life. Can you talk about how you grapple with writing about space in this way?
Oh, yeah. Uh, yeah, that's a good question. I grapple with writing in space. Yeah. I mean, it's home. This is home, and it's what's been amazing is like I've lived since I went to college outside of Pittsburgh, but then I was coming back home a lot. I went to grad school in Indiana, but I was still coming home for like summers and stuff. And then I moved all the way out to Montana in 2020, and I can't write about any other place than those mountains in Pennsylvania, and it's wild because I would love to write about Montana poems. Like I have ideas of Montana poems and
Yeah.
Indiana poems, and
Mm.
but I just can't. It's an obsession. It is home place that is infinitely, uh, mesmerizing to me because there are so many different complexities and dualities of people who are closer to the land than probably the average American, but and then they're either voting for or causing pain to the land in a way that directly impacts them. And so how do we hold these things? There's just such humanity
Mm.
around these different communities that I grew up around that makes me love and angry and sad and happy, and so to be within those places and to also have the imagination, the different stories of what this land used to be, what these trees used to be. And that's a line that comes up within the title poem a lot. Trees that used to be churches, and then and what is the land now? A diminished existence from what all has been taken. So uh, I think it's just because I think it's because I can't write about anything else. That's just the long and the short of it. I'm like, geez, if I could write about anything else, maybe I would, but maybe I wouldn't.
Mm.
I don't know. But it is all that I can write about.
Mm. I mean, that's not true, but I feel that anxiety as a poet constantly, like as someone from, Arkansas, from a specific community, I, I can't stop writing about my dad, It's like, oh, if
Yeah.
I could write about anybody else. Okay.
I mean, you write good poems, so you're good.
All right. Thanks, Tamara, for that lovely question, and
Yes.
thanks for collating all these questions and sending them to me. You're killing it right now. This is so good. Okay, this is from Mary. Thank you, Mary. For both Austin, oh, thank you, and Noah. I'd love to hear how you landed on each of your book titles. What did that process look like? Were there other contenders, or did you always know that this was the title for your book?
How about you answer first? Because I've been talking all the time.
Save your voice. Okay, so at the Park on the Edge of the Country, thank you for asking. Was not the title that the book got picked up under. I had this like desire in my head. I was really struggling with my manuscript title. I can't remember. Yeah, I guess we're about to hear no your process, but for me, I was real. I had like just really ambitious ideas for the book. I wanted it to tell this really particular story, but I also wanted it to, um, I don't know, to be intellectual and like cerebral and like be able to be multiple things and be ambiguous. Whereas I also like I had the spine of the book, the poems that mattered the most were like these poems that were very clearly about this specific thing, which is yeah, being Mexican American, legacy of migration and such, having difficult, family dynamics, etc., memory, stuff like that. And so I submitted the book under the manuscript to the prize that it won at Ohio State Press. Under the title was Undermine, but in two words, right, split apart. And I was like, that's so cool. It could mean so, there's mine in there, so it's clearly personal, but also it's like you could project a lot of meaning onto it. And when it got picked up, the book manuscript got picked up, I was like, that doesn't feel right. And I like sent like a message to the editor there. It was like, hey, like I'm kind of like having this hunch that maybe I could think about changing the title. And the editor there, Kristen Elias Rowley, was like, thank God. Like, what do you think? Was like super like open to the idea of me changing it. And that's I've had at the Park on the Edge of the Country had been a contender before, but it's a small poem in my book, and it's not one in which the Austin-y character, the speaker really shows up. So I never really considered it like a serious thing, but then it kept popping up for me. And it felt like it had this like thematic strength to it that I was really looking for. So I ended up there, and they liked it. So that's the it's not a very like romantic idea of coming to one's manuscript title, but that's how I came to mind. What about you, Noah Davis?
Jeez, yeah, my goodness, that was a saga. But I mean, it's such a striking title. Like I mean, there have been so many poetry books and so many poetry titles. Like you will never see that title again. Like it
Mm.
is so striking, and the way that they designed that book is just beautiful. Uh, this so I submitted this collection for I think a year before I put that title poem in, and it just that putting that title poem because it did kind of feel very separate from this whole collection, and but I finally was like, I think that can fit in here. I think that can fit in here, and once that long poem, I mean, it's 12 pages, 2,000 words. Like it just demands so much space in a poetry collection. It was like, okay, that kind of has to be the title of the collection. That is where the gravity of the book, that's where it pins it down. So yeah. Yeah, mine was much more straightforward, I think, than that one. But
Oh,
there were some comments though about maybe it could be changed, but I was just like, I don't know. It's got to be that, yeah. So yeah, that's the story on mine.
you didn't have a saga, Noah?
I did not have a saga on that
I thought
one.
I thought I had a type five. I was like, that story is kills at parties. Um,
It probably does. Kills me, bro.
okay, here's one from our dear friend, the great poet El Renee. So
Oh,
good, so
auntie.
good to see you, El Renee. Dear poets, how did you know when you were done with your books? Did the process feel like a soft closing of a door, an exclamation mark? You left it all on the field, or something else?
Everyone who's on here should go read El Rene's poems. They're around. They are
Oh
very
yeah.
much around. So everyone should go read those. Um, yeah, mine did not feel that way.
Mm.
I think that whenever I had completed that thesis, it was one thing, and I knew it wasn't. I knew it wasn't done, but I was like, okay, cut print. We're done with that. But and then I started to come back to it, within like 2021 and sending out but not really feeling in love with it. So I don't know why I was sending it out.
Mm.
And then, letting it sit for about 5 months and then coming back to it and playing around with order and then inserting the long poem back into it and feeling then at that point, oh, okay, like this can be something in it. And I would be happy if it got picked up. I would be proud of this. And then, but also having in the back of my head, like, okay, I'm going to give this a year
Mm.
out in the world, and then I can come back and fiddle with it some more. And thank goodness for CavanKerry's process because I had to do edits on it before it was formally accepted. And I got to go back in and try to make it better, try to make it tighter, add to it. And then after it was formally accepted, there were even more edits around it. So, I mean, it felt like it was a living piece before. I mean, yeah, for up until the last, round of copy edits, which feels really good. I for the first book, I remember talking with Adrian and him being like, I I won a prize, and I was like, okay, well, can I not do anything about it now? Like, is it all set in stone? And he was like, no, you can do whatever you want. Like, whenever you send this manuscript to this editor. And so, like, to have, somebody say that, and it to be like, okay, it can continue to be a living thing, right up until the point it gets sent off to press. Like that kind of took, the fear around it, for me. And I was just so grateful, for the editors here to continually make it better. And I believe it got better from the time that it was submitted to the time that where it is now.
No, totally. I mean, all the work y'all put into it made a gorgeous, gorgeous book. It feels like you got the book that that needed to be out into the world, you know? So that's awesome. For me, uh, I think it was a moment where like my ambition, what's the like phrase, like when your grasp, like what, like your reach is beyond your grasp or something. My ambitions were bigger than where the book really was when I was submitting it. Um, but I submitted in like a round of manuscript things, like in, I don't know, the fall of 23 or something. And I got the call in January of 24. And in that time, I like wrote a couple more poems, and that's when it like in the between time of submitting it and getting the book picked up is when I finished writing all the poems for the book. There was like a couple more that I needed left, and like once I got the call from Amy Nezukumatato, which is so sweet, to get a call in like in the middle of winter in Palo Alto. Uh, it like pretty I had a really short time frame. Like I don't how long was yours, Noah, from acceptance to when you had to submit the final manuscript to for your contest? Do you remember? This is a while ago now.
Uh, for the first book,
Yeah, for the first
it
book.
was like 7, 8 months.
No, yeah, I had a month and a half. So
Gosh.
that was a really quick, but it was really clarifying for me actually that tight deadline, and it made me be like, okay, here I can see the fluff. I can see what doesn't need to be in this book. I can see what it needs. So it was like actually getting the book picked up made me really clarified for me all this other stuff that's for other, like I had other poems about like they were more artsy or more like just about my reading life or something. And it was like that. I love those poems still, but it was like that's not in this saga, this family saga. It wasn't really necessary. So I found like once I knew that the book was going to be out of my hands soon is when it was clarified, like, oh, here is done. And I mean, as writers, I think we like to think that we know our work the best. But sometimes that's not true. And I remember speaking of Stacy, Lynn Brown, one of our wonderful teachers at Indiana during our time there, she said something to that effect, not with a whole manuscript, but with a poem. I think one of us in our workshop had like asked something about like what happens if you get a poem picked up and it gets published and actually you're not that into it anymore, or something like to that effect. And I remember Stacy was like, sometimes you have to trust other people have good taste. Like if an editor took it and loved it, it's like your anxious poet brain, you're like wanting it to be perfect and to say everything in the whole world. You have this huge ambition for your work, but sometimes it is speaking to people and you don't know why quite yet.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, I think maybe we've gotten through all the questions. Um, My goodness, this is amazing. Thank you all so much, everybody. Tamara, Dimitri, Gabe, all the folks at CavanKerry Press. Thank you so much for taking my guy's beautiful manuscript and making this incredible art object from it. Look at these incredible blurbers. Um, so lucky, Noah, to get to do this with you, man.
Yeah, man, it's been so good. I'm so grateful. Yeah, Tamara, Gabe, and Dimitri. Yeah, just so grateful. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Austin, for sharing the night. It's, yeah, couldn't have been better. Couldn't have been better.
Thanks, you guys. Can we get like some snaps or some hearts? In a second, my team is gonna ask y'all to unmute so we can just give all the love to Noah and Austin. This was a fantastic reading. But if you don't want to speak, just doing those little like emojis, just showing all the love. This was fantastic.
Woo! Woo, 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 woo!
That's you both.
Love you, Nono.
Go, poet!
Love you, Noah.
Thanks, Mom. Thank
Oh
you.
my gosh.
Thanks, Al.
That's great.
Fantastic.